This is Scott the Fix-It Guy. Today we have a Whirlpool dryer that is not starting. It buzzes like it wants to start, but it just won't start.
Yeah, you can hear it trying, huh? You can see it. It's almost turning too.
So it could be something as blocking the motor from being able to turn, or it could be that the motor is just really dirty. So we're unplugging it. We're going to take off the top panel, and then we'll take off the front panel and remove the tumbler so we can get to the motor. So we're going to take out 2 Phillips head screws from underneath the filter, and then we can remove the top panel. We have to take a standard head screwdriver or paint scraper to pry in on 2 clips. They're about 2 inches in from either side that will release the top panel. And the top panel will then hinge up, and that will reveal a couple of screws that are holding the front panel on in the upper right hand and upper left hand corner. And there's also a couple of wires we have to disconnect for the door switch. So that hinged up the top panel, and we're going to use our driver to take out these 2 screws. So I like this little right-angled attachment. Makes it a little bit easier, but you don't have to have this. You can just go straight at it. I think the screws are 3/8. And then we'll reach down in there and disconnect the 2 wires for the door switch. And then we're going to lift up on the front panel by about maybe, those are the 2 wires, about 2 inches up, and that'll release the bottom clips that are holding the bottom of the front panel. And then we can just pull the whole front panel off. So in this dryer, what was keeping the motor from turning wasn't dirt. Sometimes that's the case, just a dirty motor. But it was in the fan housing in the back. There was a hair tie that had wrapped around the fan, and it was just creating too much friction, and the motor couldn't overcome it. So by removing the hair tie, the motor did great. So now we're going to kneel down, get close to the ground so we can release the dryer belt. We have to get the either wheel and push it up a little bit by about 1 inch, and then we can pull the belt off of the motor pulley. And now the tumbler's released, and we can lift the tumbler out. I usually lift it by the belt. It's kind of a tight spot here, but it's workable. We have the sink in the way. We got a big old sewage pipe behind. And notice it's really hard to turn the motor pulley. It should be easy, so I'm grabbing it with some vice grips. I'm thinking that maybe just the bearing is a little bit corroded. But as I turn it, I can hear something behind the motor in the fan housing rubbing. So that's making me think maybe something's caught back there. So again, I'm just using the vice grips because it's a little bit hard to turn. And it shouldn't be. On a healthy dryer, you should be able just to grab that with your fingers, spin it, and it should actually keep spinning for a couple of revolutions on its own. I can hear something back there. So while I got it open, I'm going to do a little cleaning. Just going to brush away any dirt I can see, and then I'll use some electrical cleaner. This is good stuff. You can get it at Home Depot. And I'm just going to spray all the connections, and I'm going to spray in between the stator and the rotor just to get everything as clean as possible. Sometimes just accumulated dirt and the motor won't make good connections anymore, and you'll get that humming effect. So Sometimes the motors are just really burned out. This motor is probably 20 years old, but it's actually still doing good. So I'm going to test it by putting a little wire in between these two lid switch wires, or door switch wires, and then I'll plug it in and press start and see if the motor's going to do better. Before it was just humming, wouldn't spin. So now I can hear it. It's definitely working. Sounds a little bit labored, but it's spinning. So that did help. Still think something's maybe caught in the fan though, in the back. So I'll turn it off, and I'm going to actually climb over the washing machine and get behind the dryer. There's very little space back there, but
it might be okay. I got it going. We got it cleaned up. Sounded pretty good. I'm gonna get some lubrication from the car
just to inspect.
And then I'll put it back together. But I think we got it.
The blower wheel to see if there's anything back there. So I got the panel off. It just had a bunch of peripheral screws. Now I'm taking off about, I think there's 4 screws that hold this ducting in position. Once I got the screws out, I also had to kind of pry the ducting free, because I guess it had been there for years and years. Usually they just come right off, but I had to use my standard head screwdriver to kind of pry it free. And then I could see the big blower wheel, and right there I could see some kind of cloth thing. And when I pulled on it, it looked like a hair tie had broken and just wrapped itself around. And that was just too much tension or too much friction for the motor, because it has to turn the tumbler, has to overcome that friction, and then if you have a lot of heavy clothing, that can be pretty tough. But once I got that out, and after cleaning the motor, it did great. Probably has another 5 years of life in it. So there's just, I think it's 4 screws or 5 screws that are holding this ducting on. Sorry about the angle, it's just so cramped it's hard to see. But when you get in there, you'll see them. And then once you take those screws out, you'll be able to take that ducting off. And then the blower wheel is just sitting right there. I actually didn't have to take the ducting all the way off. I just pulled it slightly back and I could see the little obstruction. So I'm putting the back panel back on. It just has a bunch of peripheral screws, 1/4" screws that you zip on. And that should do the trick. You got the motor cleaned up. Putting the 2 Phillips head screws back on the filter. Put the filter back in. We're going to plug it in. Give it a test. We got to put the ducting back on. A lot of times with these ducts, you can just pull them off and then just wiggle them back on. You don't even have to really go through all the tightening. So I'm going to try to climb out of here. Climb over the washing machine. Do a little gymnastics. I'm going to plug it back in, give it a test. There we go. That sounds good. Got a healthy dryer again. Probably again maybe 5 to 6 more years of life left. So thanks so much for watching, and I hope this helps you. And please subscribe. Thank you.